Hello audience, most welcome to this very special show of Jamuna Television, India the Neighbor. It's me Mahfuz Mishu, welcome all you again with us. Today I have someone very special and he is His Excellency Mr. Bikram Kumar Doraisamy, the High Commissioner of India to Dhaka. Excellency, most welcome to our show. How are you?
Good evening, excellent, great to be here.
We are very lucky to have you today with us, and we have a very long-lasting relationship between Bangladesh and India. And you are here from 8th October officially, if I am not wrong.
Correct.
And within these 2 or 3 months, you have did many things. A virtual meeting between two top leaders, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and Narendra Modi held, air bubble started. So you were so busy during this COVID pandemic also. So what's your initial feeling about Bangladesh after these 2 or 3 months?
Well, thank you. I must say it's my honor to be here at your TV station. I know what an important and influential channel Jamuna TV is, and I'm delighted, of course, to visit this entire corporate group also.
Yeah.
Look, I must admit I'm a little biased. I've always had a soft corner for Bangladesh. My own family history is closely connected with your country, your liberation story. My own wife's ancestry has roots right here in Bangladesh. And so Bangladesh is not just another country for me. It's much more than that.
Yeah.
The people, the culture. I feel personally invested in your country.
Yeah, and our friendship is from the very beginning of our birthhood, the birthhood of Bangladesh. And it's an interesting thing. Your father was a freedom fighter on behalf of Indian government, and he fought for us. And after almost 50 years, you are serving here as a career diplomat and representing a big country like India. So what's your feeling like that, connecting with your fathers?
Well, this came out more from social media than anything that I sought to put out originally. But I think, of course, unfortunately, he's no more, but he would have been delighted to know that I'm here. We've had our own connection with Bangladesh. A very good friend of my father's did the National Defense College course from Bangladesh in India 30 years ago. So, the topic of Bangladesh, your history, your culture, your remarkable economic progress, millions of Indians like me feel personal pride to see a friend do so well. So, yes, I think my father would have been very pleased.
Yeah. Already you met our Prime Minister, you met our all other political and administrative influential people, political influential people here. And you are traveling a lot. So there are some questions raised because India, and when you arrive in Bangladesh, you come by road due to COVID pandemic. So is there any plan from your side to see the whole country in your own eyes?
Well, I would love to. It would be an honor to be able to visit every one of the 64 districts of this beautiful country. I think, this is a country that has so much to offer for a visitor, for, if you will, a pilgrim like me to come and see what this history of this ancient civilization is. I'd love to visit each of the districts possible to try and promote our partnership at the people's level. Because, 170 million people. There's 170 million potential friends for India. So this is very important for us.
So where our relation stands right now, sometimes we have found that our Prime Minister and your Prime Minister said we are more than friendship, we are more than a strategic partner. So where we stand really?
Look, we are not just neighbors, we are connected civilizationally. Yeah. There is nothing about Indian culture and civilization that Bangladesh doesn't know. And there's nothing about your culture that Indians don't know. What we need is to be able to build beyond that. So I think our leaders are very right in saying you can't fit this friendship into a box like strategic partnership. It's much more than that. As I was trying to say earlier also, our friendship isn't just foreign policy.
Yeah.
What happens in Bangladesh, what happens in India is as much a domestic issue as a foreign policy issue. So it is something that we have to learn how to manage and do even better at. It's a partnership between relatives. We are family.
And between people to people.
Absolutely. So the whole country, both countries are family for each other. So we need to build it in that spirit.
Excellency, we are going through a global pandemic, COVID-19, and again the situation is going worse day by day. Sometimes it improves. So do you think this COVID sometimes hampers our bilateral relations, bilateral meetings and many things? Because many meetings have postponed, some
Yes.
meetings happened virtually. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was supposed to visit Bangladesh on last year. Now we are hoping that he might visit on next year on March,
Right.
as they have discussed. So is this pandemic create some barriers regarding our bilateral relations?
I wouldn't say barriers, but yes, it has created some difficulties in the normal, what we would have considered normal interaction. It's made it difficult for people to travel.
Yeah.
People are, one, nervous about traveling. Legitimately, this is an unknown disease still. We don't fully understand why some people get very sick and some people just get no symptoms and just get better after a few weeks. We don't know why. Second, it has also meant that public transportation systems that connected us, not just air, but rail and road, all of this has kind of been suspended. We restarted air bubble arrangements and we hope to be able to build on that. But the normal interaction between our people hasn't actually happened in this last several months because of this pandemic. So that has been a loss. Business ties have dipped a bit, but we've now been able to start picking it up again. The Bangladesh economy is really motoring along really splendidly, so business is picking up again. Political level, government level contacts have reduced. A number of ministerial visits were to happen. All the celebrations of Mujib Barsha were to happen. We were supposed to be, partners in celebrating this very great man all over the world. All of that couldn't happen. So yes, it has had an impact.
As we are talking about COVID situation, COVID vaccine, we all are waiting, and already some vaccine is in production. And Bangladesh has signed a deal with Serum Institute of India. So Bangladesh is waiting for that vaccine, and India assured us whenever it comes in the India, that also comes in Bangladesh. How does it mean really? Is it again a big example of our friendship?
Well, look, let's put it this way. Our borders are so tightly connected.
Yeah.
Our people, we are relatives. Our people across the border move quite freely across the border, particularly, through open areas and all of that. Now, in such a circumstance, not just Bangladesh, but also India, Nepal, Bhutan, these 4 or 5 countries, if one of us has the disease, the other is going to have it. And if one of us gets the vaccine, the other is going to need it. So it is in enlightened self-interest that we must all have the vaccine at the same time. We can't be immune to the vaccine and you're not, or the other way around is also not possible. So yes, you're right. The vaccine must go out. It must be widely made available. But the process, of course, is nationally determined.
Yeah.
Your government will have its own process through which it will certify the use of this vaccine. Once that is done, the vaccine will be made available. We are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I understand that the process is in play. Hopefully, it will be completed in both countries quickly. Vaccine production is already going on. So the vaccine will be made available soon. And our Prime Minister and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina spoke about this. And we know that it is essential for us to be able to work with our neighbors to ensure that everybody gets the vaccine.
There is a debate going on regarding vaccine, about the price of vaccine, because the formula is from Oxford and that is manufactured in India, and then it will come to Bangladesh, and Bangladesh will have to distribute it among its people. So some people said the price is too high in compare with other vaccines. Do you have any explanation regarding this, or?
Well, look, I can't talk about pricing formulations, but what we do know is that essentially the deal that the government of Bangladesh has struck with Serum Institute and Bexim Pharma is for the pricing to be at par with whatever is being charged in India. We are also a price-sensitive market, so it's extremely unlikely that we would agree to a high price. For we've never been known to be willing to take high prices for our own needs. So I would assume that if you're getting it at the same price as us, it would be a reasonable price.
Yeah, a lot of people traveling from Bangladesh to India as well as India to Bangladesh. So you have resumed some visas except tourist visas.
Yes.
So many people are habituated to even shopping from India, even their treatment, normal treatment from India. So it's a popular question when the tourist visa might be resumed.
You're trying really hard. The health departments are being a little cautious, So we haven't yet been able to persuade them. I thought it would be opened in a graded way within this winter season, sometime in December. But unfortunately, then there was this second wave of cases worldwide. There is a new strain that people are worried about. So every time there's always some new problem that comes up. We understand that even if tourist visas do open up, it will be only limited numbers of people who will travel right now. Everybody is nervous. But we want to be able to open this up soon. So we are working very hard to try and persuade all authorities on both sides.
Yeah.
Because, we do need to bring on board health departments in our states, in Delhi, and also to keep our Bangladeshi health partners informed. Ultimately, we don't want to contribute to any trouble. So this is an ongoing process. I'm hopeful that in the near future we'll be able to do this. It's got delayed because of the continuing evolution of the pandemic.
So your neighborhood policy is very much clear to Bangladesh as it started by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and you always said Bangladesh is first among all other neighbors. And before coming here, you were in charge of South Asia and Bangladesh desk in your Ministry of External Affairs. So definitely we have achieved a lot in our bilateral relation, like land boundary agreement, deep sea resolution, and so many things. But still there are some challenges. Being the ambassador of India here in Dhaka, what are the major challenges you found in our bilateral relationship? I want to know this, but before that, I have to take a break.
All right.
Dear audience, we are going for a short break. Please stay with us. Dear audience, thank you for being with us. You are watching the special show India the Neighbor and Indian High Commissioner to Dhaka, Bikram Kumar Doraiswamy with me. My question is, what are the challenges of our relationship right now?
Main challenge is to take forward the relationship in a way that makes it irreversible, which is to say that we need to recognize that there are always going to be issues because of the complexity of our situation. We are so tightly interlinked that there will always be something that disturbs businesses, the public, something or the other that there will always be. It's never going to be a relationship where there's no issue, obviously.
And that's not possible.
It's not possible even. Okay. But we need to build beyond that. So we need to create much more interest in each other's countries. We need to have much more business working together. Because when people are making money together, then there is no interest in having things that detract from the relationship. We need to have more students studying with each other, because the next generation of young Indians and Bangladeshis will be entirely a generation that's born well after 1971. So 1971 will be history for them. They will want to know what is future-oriented. We need to invest much more in future areas of the partnership, IT, fintech. So we need to figure out how, in a borderless world, how do two neighbors work together to make their partnership even more relevant. We need to also invest in things like, we have common challenges, security of women, addressing social problems of development. Terrorism, ensuring that, people who get left behind are not marginalized and become susceptible to
like disabled people and others.
Absolutely, to radical groups and all of that, or in both countries. So we need to work together because these are all connected problems. What I have been told when I've come to Bangladesh, everybody who talks about issues talks about broadly 3 or 4 sets of problems. None of these are fundamental problems. There's no, gap of capacity to address them. These are things that can be addressed. They're complications because they're human problems, and it takes time to disentangle because the larger solution to any such problem requires much more effort and attention than is currently being paid by both sides. But the big challenge really will have to be to make the relationship irreversible in the future. So that's what we should work on.
So you are emphasizing on economic development as well as economic diplomacy,
and people-to-people ties.
And people-to-people
much more people-to-people ties.
But definitely, once upon a time, there was a anti-India sentiment in local politics here in Bangladesh, and sometimes it also prevails in some part of India still. Now it is decreasing here in Bangladesh, and no big political parties use this anti-Indian sentiment again for their vote or going to the people. But still there are some issues like border killing,
Yes.
and you do understand the sentiment of Bangladesh people, our sentiment. And my question is, we know from the very top level to you, it said that you are trying to make it zero. Last border conference also same thing was uttered. But yes, sometimes it decreasing, but it not happened in India-China border or not happened in India-Pakistan border. And we are you are our trusted friend. Why it happened here?
Okay, so let me explain this a bit. One, on the India-Bangladesh border, the border actually goes through densely populated areas. These were all earlier, 60, 70 years ago, contiguous villages and things like that. Two, the India-Pakistan border is heavily fenced, heavily mined. People don't live near the border anymore because, most unfortunately, particularly in the line of control area, there is extensive military activity that happens on both sides. So that also, pushes people away. People do get hurt there, so it's not like people aren't getting hurt. On the India-China boundary, the boundary is almost entirely underpopulated or unpopulated. Okay. So obviously there's no people pressure. Same on the India-Myanmar boundary. Only the India-Bangladesh land boundary is extensively populated. This is not an excuse. What I'm trying to say is...
But that's another reality.
It is a reality. And the reality is people on both sides of the border are, if not the same, they're very, very similar. They speak the same language, same traditions.
Some color.
It's impossible to tell. I mean, I can't tell the difference between an Indian and a Bangladeshi in Dhaka. How can you tell the difference on the border? What is happening, and maybe we haven't done a good enough job of bringing all the facts out. Our own preference would be to have no violent incidents happen on the border at all. But what is happening is that on any given day, particularly in 4 or 5 districts, there is heavy pressure on the border late at night, typically between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m., which are not normal hours for business, let's say. Nobody's going for tourism at that hour. The fences are breached. People are cutting the fences open. I can show you photographs of that. And it's on both sides. So the people on both sides, there is active sort of illicit economic activity happening. And it is happening primarily on our side of the border. In fact, almost entirely on our side of the border. So when this happens, typically it's a group of 8 to 10 to 15 people, mixed, Indian and Bangladeshi. It's pitch dark. You can't tell the difference. The language is all the same. They're all speaking the same dialects of Bangla also.
And especially in the night time.
It's pitch dark. You can't see a thing. Our border security force patrols at night. This has been given to them as their mandate to preserve the sanctity of the border, right? It's their job. So they're typically patrols of between 2 and 4 people, never more than that. Only one carries a lethal weapon for self-defense. The others are carrying crowd dispersal weapons, pump action guns, tear gas. But you can't use tear gas at night. You can't even see people. So what happens when the border patrols intercept such activities? Say they take away whatever they try and arrest them or take away their whatever goods they're trying to smuggle. The group obviously gets quite agitated, and they attack the border guards. They attack them with knives, dahs, these long, sharp instruments. It's only at that time that they fire. So the number of incidents is directly proportional to the number of fence breaches. So if you see the totality of statistics, you will see, one, that the number of incidents on the border, fence breaches, smuggling incidents that are being intercepted or not intercepted, has been going up over the years. 2, the number of people who've been injured, both Bangladeshi and Indian, has been going up also as a result. Even BSF, we don't put out these statistics, and maybe we should start doing that. But this year, for instance, a fair number of people from India have also been killed. In the last year, there were more people from India who were killed than from Bangladesh in such violence. Because it's impossible to tell. How do you know who's who? They fire at whoever comes at them. Third, and most importantly, all of this activity takes place on our border, but not all the people who have been killed in the violence are being killed by the BSF. So your statistic says 45 people were killed this year. BSF has only accounted for about 14 people this year, who were most unfortunately killed in such actions, because they're on our side of the border. We know, I mean, the body is being returned by us. You can't get that wrong, right? So when they when we try and compare statistics, what seems to be the case is that there are violent groups on both sides.
Bangladesh and India.
Yeah, so they're also shooting each other at times.
Yeah.
Not all of this is happening
With BSF only.
Why would they know? Why would they, if these incidents are happening, BSF is announcing it.
Yeah.
It's not like we are hiding the fact. So why would we not?
So what's the solution of it?
Good point. That's exactly what I've been trying to say. The solution for it is to increase joint patrolling at night. So we share intelligence. It's important that if we share intelligence saying that we know that this is happening, BGB should help patrol on the opposite side. If BGB has information, they should share it with the BSF. So that jointly we can prevent activities from happening. We should involve the district administration to go out and brief people.
Even local administration.
Absolutely,
also.
district administration.
But it was not supposed to use the lethal weapons in the border.
No. The condition was always only for self-defense.
Only one.
I'm happy to bring out the statistics. Typically, for instance, in the last year, over 1,100 uses of pump action guns were recorded. Less than 100 instances of firing with lethal weapons were recorded. Add to that, on top of pump action guns, all the other materials that we used, the lethal weapon usage is less than 5% of the total amount of crowd dispersal tactics being used. So there is no, this is the last resort. It's not the first resort.
Okay, but number of death is sometimes very much. It's very shocking for the own people, their relatives.
Of course.
One death is sometimes create huge.
Every death is one too many.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Look, nobody should die, but by that token, it doesn't mean that the BSF guy should die either.
No, never.
So, there have been guys who've lost an arm, there have been guys who've lost a hand. You can't see people coming at you at times. So we need to address the situation. And this requires district administration, border guarding forces, and even if possible, government on both sides to try and invest in creating avenues for legal economic activity.
Definitely.
So, if, for instance,
like border hut.
Exactly. We've been saying border huts for a long time. If you have a border hut there, at the very least, some people can be given an opportunity to do something legally.
And to survive economically.
Absolutely. And then we can increase the limits.
And I hope it would be done in the few years, especially during your tenure.
I'm very keen. We really need the two sides to agree to this.
And one more thing you must recall that sometimes onion crisis here in Bangladesh, all on a sudden, and that happens because without any prior information to Bangladesh, India stopped it last 2 years.
Yes.
And it creates some unethical problem here in Bangladesh because all the businessmen are not ethical, So what's the solution? What would be happened in the next year?
No, I understand this problem and I deeply regret it personally because I think this is most unfortunate. Of course, the problem is when these crises have happened when our onion crops have failed. And most unfortunately, this vegetable is an important vegetable in the cuisine in India and in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
And the flavor of our onions in both countries is the same.
Very popular.
You can't change it by getting it from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I very much understand the sentiment, and I personally, we've tried very hard to at least say that we should have some prior notification. But the problem also with prior notification is that the moment you notify, say in 10 days we're going to stop onion supply, what happens then is hoarders get into the business then, and they immediately buy up all the onions, and so it's a major management problem.
And it's a two-way problem, I think.
Of course, it's a problem. I'm not even saying in Bangladesh. It's a problem in India to start with. Hoarders exist in India also, and it's the same sentiment that happens in both countries. But what is the way forward? I think the best way forward is for us to work extra hard to develop greater onion production capacity, including through joint venture programs in Bangladesh, so that at the very least the agricultural market will not be disturbed unnecessarily by developments in our country.
Yeah.
So I think that is the way forward, and we should be your partners for making this happen, because we've got nothing to lose if Bangladesh develops better and is not dependent on us for this. Every year's erratic supply of onions then will be eased out a bit. It will ease it out for us also.
And one more popular problem and the most awaited problem is about Tista Water Treaty. And we have 54 common rivers. We are sharing many things like rivers also. But Tista is only one river, but it looks like litmus test between our two friendly countries. And Bangladesh is ready to do it from 2011. if I'm not wrong.
Completely
And
right.
we have signed some big deals like Ganga in 1996.
Correct.
So the treaty is not signed yet because of Indian internal mechanism or system. So who will solve this?
Good question. Look, the issue is this: we have to resolve our own internal politics for this. It is not a Bangladesh problem. We understand your impatience with our system. Let me assure you, people in India are also impatient. We don't always see the need for all of these things to happen, but they have to happen. Constitutionally, the law in India puts river waters as a state subject, which means states have primary authority over river water sharing arrangements. It's very important to understand that. So legally, constitutionally, the union government, the government in Delhi, cannot insist. It's not just the Teesta, or it's not just West Bengal. After all, Teesta flows through 2 states. I'm not saying that any state is making a problem, but what I'm saying is we have to get everybody to agree. Even the 96 deal that you talked about on the Ganges, it could only be done once the state agreed. In this case, West Bengal.
Let Jyoti Basu.
Correct. He was persuaded that this is important, the relationship with Bangladesh is important. So while we work on the Teesta, we must also work on other rivers so that at the very least we can demonstrate that the goodwill exists on both sides to resolve as many river water issues as possible. After all, even after we resolve the Teesta, there will still be 52 more rivers to work on. So let us at least start on as many as possible. I'm confident that, you know, if once the election season is behind us in India, we'll be able to at least start again on a fresh page to try and push this through. Because ultimately, that water has to be shared. It can't not be shared. In the good years, in the good season of the year when the rain is plentiful, then there's adequate water. It's only in the 3 months of dry season, then there's not enough water for either side anyway. So it's really about sharing in those 3 months. And it's important to get that done.
But Excellency, as I recall, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said it would be signed during his tenure before that election. So he is in the power, and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is also in the power in the Bangladesh at the same time. But do you think it is properly addressed sometimes, because the Joint River Commission meeting not held in last 10 years?
Yes, you're right.
So are both countries trying to avoid this problem, or?
No, I think perhaps earlier the argument that was made for not holding this was that, you know, it will build up expectations. Maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we should, till we have internal political agreement, maybe we shouldn't do it. And this was sort of the conversation.
There is some dilemma, I think.
Yeah, if you do it, then people will expect. Now I think everybody recognizes that holding the Joint River Water Commission meetings, the technical level meetings, the secretary level meetings, we should do it anyway, because there's other water also to do. There are other issues to also resolve on water. And so that process is starting, thankfully. It's about 2-3 weeks later than I hoped for, but it's starting in early January. The JTM is supposed to happen, Joint Technical Meeting, after which we'll have the secretaries meeting and hopefully the ministerial meeting also. So I'm confident that, you know, the political level goodwill exists to show that we are able to talk and discuss about all these issues. So river water issues should progress, and I think Prime Minister Modi's seriousness about this is well known. Once he makes his commitment to do something, he does deliver on his commitment. So I'm confident that, having said that he wants to push forward on river water issues, he will give the necessary directives to the official.
I want to know one thing about common rivers, because another 6 river is on board.
Yes.
You know, and that discussion is going on, and perhaps the data is already collected from.
They're going to harmonize the data now. Yes.
So is there any chance to see anything on table or visible during if Prime Minister Modi visit Dhaka on next March?
Well, inshallah, let's hope so. I don't want to prejudge what will happen because, one, I'm not the specialist on it. But from what I understand, it should not be too difficult on both sides to come to a reasonable arrangement. So hopefully if we show that, then I think it will help change the narrative a bit on this.
Yeah, and you know, we have a big sea, and we shared the sea, and the dispute has been resolved with both Bangladesh and Myanmar, both India and Myanmar. And you know, Bangladesh have a huge potential of exploring oil, gas and mineral resources in the deep sea. And ONGC, Bangladesh has signed one deal, one MOU
for two offshore areas.
For 2 offshores. But why don't it happen? Why don't you be a big partner regarding exploring of this?
We'd love to. Give us a chance. We'd love to do more. So ONGC is now looking for subcontractors to start. They've done the hydrographic risk survey. I read recently about it. And they have till February 23 to 2023 to complete this process, I believe. So hopefully that process will start. We'd love to be partners in developing not just offshore oil, but jointly developing the blue economy together. It's our shared bay. Why don't we work together? It makes absolute sense. Everything from better management of fishing stock to rescue centers for our fishermen. After all, this is difficult. In the monsoon season, our fishermen are at risk in both countries. So let us work together on this. This is a perfect example of partnership if we can do more.
Even though Transborder Power Management has established even Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Sheikh Hasina, and almost more than 1,000 megawatt power is coming from India to Bangladesh, as well as Bangladesh is planning to have some power plant, especially hydropower in Nepal and Bhutan, and that needs the clarification from India to bring it in Bangladesh. I want to know the update of that project. Before that, again, I have to take a break, and it's the last break. Dear audience, please be with us. We will back within a few minutes. Thank you very much for being with us. We are talking with Bikram Kumar Doraisamy, High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh. Excellency, my question was regarding power sector cooperation, power and energy sector cooperation. Where we are stand right now?
So you were asking me specifically about the regional portion. So you'll be glad to know that we have passed our cross-border electricity transmission guidelines. So that is ready. We can use legally the processes in place for power transmission projects, for power sharing arrangements, for a regional power market, if you will, to be developed between India, Nepal, Bhutan and Bangladesh, eventually also Myanmar. And I think this is a great thing, because essentially what it will do is to create economies of scale so that the totality of power pricing can come down in our entire region. What is currently missing is transmission capacity. Right now, the totality of transmission capacity between India and Bangladesh, for instance, is about totally used, about 1100 megawatts. It's all totally used. There's hardly any spare capacity. New transmission capacity is being built. The Adanis are building a power station for Bangladesh in Jharkhand in eastern India. And they will have a dedicated line to move 1500 megawatts to Bangladesh directly. But, so therefore there's still no spare transmission capacity. So we jointly need to develop new transmission capacity. And some of this we need to do anyway for our own reasons. So if we can increase transmission capacity, if we can create a modern regional power market, we would then be able to provide the following advantages. One, better pricing for power in the entire region. Two, what's called a spot market for power purchase. So, day after pricing, that day pricing, we can ensure that people can benefit.
Like Singapore, Malaysia.
Exactly. You can benefit from the best pricing for the day of power. So in other words, everybody is compelled to offer power at better pricing. Third is grid stability. So essentially, the bigger the grid, the more the quality, the better the quality of power. So as, for instance, your nuclear power station comes online, you need to be able to back it up with very stable power. Nuclear power is terrific power. It's very, very good quality power, but it has to be done with great technical capacity to ensure
safety and security.
And that safety is impaired the moment your power fluctuates. So, better interconnection is the key to giving Bangladesh a much more robust grid capacity.
We are sharing many things like Sundarban, and there is a power plant built by Bangladesh India Friendship Power Company Limited, that is Rampal. There is a debate going on, as it is a coal-based power plant, it might be harmful for the Sundarban, and you know the importance of Sundarban,
of course,
more than me. So do you have any plan to assess the impact on environment?
So there is a robust environmental assessment program for the Rampal project, the Maitri project as we call it. And for this, there are 54 separate items of environmental safety that have been required of the power plant. For instance, the flue gas chimney is completely non-bypassable. So there is no way that any coal effluent sulfur dioxide basically can come out into the thing without being cured. This is why in terms of the power plant that is being built, This has the highest environmental safety ratings, including for earthquake, cyclone, and for escaping gas, for poisonous gas, of any project in Bangladesh. It is better than, in fact, the quality of work that has been done is better than most of the projects in India also.
So can you share the progress of that power plant? How much?
So most of the construction would be done. I'm also happy to share two other things which are unique details. Extensive training is being done so that, for instance, high-end welding, which is a very expensive skill to acquire, with American certification, is being provided on-site for Bangladeshi welders. We are not interested in doing a power plant and taking away the workers of our own. We are interested in developing capacity with our own partners, because eventually if we do more projects in Bangladesh, we will hire only Bangladeshis then. We're already hiring a lot of Bangladeshi partners.
Mr. High Commissioner, one more thing I like to share with you, that is Rohingya crisis. And you know, Bangladesh is innocent victim of that problem. And you always said, your government said that repatriation is the only sustainable solution.
Of course.
But something we see in some resolution when it's taken in UN, you are abstained from voting, not in favor of or not in
opposition
of. So why did that happen? And people of Bangladesh believe India can play some political role to make it happen.
Look, so these are two somewhat connected issues. Let me first talk about the second part.
Yeah.
While of course we are not, playing a mediatory role or any sort like that, there already is. There are other mediators there. There's the UN. There's other countries involved. But we know that this is an issue that impacts on us as much as it. Well, not as much as you, but we are the next, basically.
Being the neighbor.
We're the only country that is a land neighbor to both. So we have been in discussions with the government of Myanmar at all levels. We do this, the only difference is that we do this offline. We don't sort of do it from a megaphone. We talk to the Myanmaris, we have consistently persuaded them, and as a result, we have at least their trust in allowing us to develop socio-economic infrastructure in Rakhine State for people to come back. So there are very few countries that are actually doing such projects in Rakhine. It's basically India, Japan, and China. So these are the only three countries whom they feel are taking a, as they call it, a balanced position on this. As we understand it, our priority is getting people back. So from that perspective, our approach here, even in the UN, is also that while we are deeply sympathetic to the problem in Bangladesh and of course the interests of the people, it is important for us to be able to push forward on a solution rather than merely just voting in the UN. So our approach is to try and actually come up with a practical outcome.
Terrorism and global extremism and terrorism common problem between you and us. But sometimes we found that some terrorists from India, they are taking shelter here in Bangladesh, as well as some terrorists who are listed here, they are hiding in some part of India. Even some killer of Bangabandhu was also in India. So why this happened?
So look, as far as this part is concerned, the last part about some of Bangabandhu's killers, you're right, they didn't come to India originally, if you remember. They went to other countries.
Other countries.
Then they changed their names. You know which countries they went to also. Whose passports they got. You know who supported them. I won't mention those countries on TV because it's not politically correct. But we know who the people were. Then they came with new names, and many of them have settled down in very quiet, humble sort of locations. But we found them. We caught them, and we repatriated them.
And handed over them.
And we handed over them. So even after 20 years, even after 30 years, Bangabandhu was our hero too. Let's not forget that. And when the murderers killed him, they tried to kill our friendship also. So we've not forgotten, we will never forget. And we will never let that happen.
You love cricket very much, and cricket is a religion between two countries.
It's the religion of both countries.
So there are some questions. Last few years, we don't find Bangladeshi players in IPL, and at the same time, Indian players are not coming in the BPL, Bangladesh Premier League, which is very popular for both countries. Both country people. At the same time, still there is not a full series between India and Bangladesh.
It's long overdue, I agree. I hope during this upcoming celebratory year, we can put that in the schedule. Look, you are our closest neighbor. People are crazy about cricket in both countries. It's important to do this. I know that Bangladesh cricket players have been extremely popular. We forget, of course, I want to only disagree slightly with you. There were two young Bangladeshi lady cricketers who did really well in the women's IPL. One of them was even on the winning team. So we had her showcased and celebrated in the Indian media channels in Bangla. recognizing what an achievement this was. But, you know, Shakib, Mustafiz, they were all huge successes in India. And maybe it's a scheduling contract thing, I don't know. But we would welcome more Bangladeshi players to come and play in the IPL. It's a huge opportunity.
Yeah. And my last question is, you are a journalist and now you are a diplomat. What would be your question if you interview Bangladeshi ambassador in India?
Well, no, look, I mean, one, he's a friend of mine, so I could hardly ask him a difficult question. So I would suggest respectfully that a much more sort of aggressive attempt is made to cultivate business, people-to-people ties, including with the rest of India. That would be a suggestion, not a question.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner, for your valuable time, and wish best of luck for your tenure in Dhaka. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dear audience, thank you very much for being with us, and we hope India-Bangladesh friendship will be longer and it will be more strong during the tenure of Bikram Kumar Doraisamy. Thank you for being with us.